French toast, I love French toast. You can either have it sweet or savoury, and my preference is sweet because I love the fruits served along with it. What I'm going to show you here today is 3 different types of toppings. So one is savoury, and then the other two are sweet. So the first one I'm going to start off, before we make the French toast, is very, very simple in itself. It's the toppings that I just wanted to go kind of delve in a little bit further into. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a caramelized apple, basically in wedges. So what we do first is we get a little bit of sugar, just like that, some caster sugar, and I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of cinnamon. Now this is just a flavour, about a teaspoon or so. You kind of know, about a teaspoon. Now cinnamon, I have a love-hate relationship. I love it sometimes, and then other times I find it delicious. It can be overpowering. But for the apple, I think it's lovely. I think it's lovely with fruit. Sometimes in cakes, and even though carrot cake is kind of a vegetable / fruit, but it's just can be too overpowering. So that's it, evenly mixed up, just like that. Give it a good stir. And then the next thing we do is we get 2 eating apples. So what we're going to do is we're going to peel the eating apple. So I love using the apple for pancakes, or as we have here now for our French toast, because we can use all our own produce, either locally, our own apples here from Clon Farm, or locally, or they're not flown in from halfway across the world basically. So that's the lovely thing. So we're nearly finished there. So what I do is, as always, with my apple peelings or any kind of peelings, I pop them into the saucepan, and our little piggies, well, they're not very little anymore, big piggies get them. So I just clean down here and there. So what we're going to do next is I want to cut these in half and quarter them and remove the core. So just down we go like that, and go down through the centre again, put it on its side, and just take out the core like that. So that's a kind of a big quarter. So I go in 3 with that one, and 2 with those guys in half. And what I'm going to do then is pop them into my cinnamon sugar. Now the other lovely thing that you could use as well is pears. Absolutely gorgeous. Exactly the same as what I'm doing. Just peel your pears and remove the core, and you can cook them as I'm going to show you now in 1 minute. So this is the final apple, just like that. I'm using the eating apples. I think they're nicer for this particular job. So that's it. And just before I toss them, I'm going to have our pan heating up. And these hold very well, even though you mightn't eat them all at the one time. And you just need a few little apples along with your French toast. You don't, because they are quite sweet. So we toss them all up in the cinnamon sugar. And as I said, you just have a couple of wedges when you're serving. And I often pop them then when they're caramelized and cooked. I pop them in and cool. I pop them into a little container, and they're lovely in the fridge then. And I take them out, and you can serve them with ice cream, or, as I said earlier, on pancakes or whatever, more French toast. So that's basically it. And as I said, if you want to do half pear, half apple, all pear, all apple. So we just come on here, the pan is heating up, and we just take a little knob of butter. So we don't want the pan too hot, and the reason we don't want the pan too hot is we don't want the butter to burn. So we just, I'll turn up the heat there, and I'm just going to let that froth off a little bit. So you can hear and see our butter is foaming up. So just basically line your apples along your pan. So what we want to do here is shaking off any excess sugar. So just on their flats like that. So what we want to do here is we want to kind of slightly put a slight brown on our apples before we're going to be adding in some apple juice. And the reason we want to get a slight browning on our apples is because I do often think they look slightly anemic looking if they don't have that brown. So we'll just get our heat up another little bit, and then I'm going to lower down the heat because I don't want the butter to burn. We're going to do the fruit compote. So for the fruit compote, I have here some fruits in the freezer from last summer. Now my friend gave me some lovely blackberries that she had in her own garden, and I have some of her own raspberries here, and I also have some of our blackcurrants in here. So I have a mixture, but you could use all blackcurrants, all blackberries, all red currants, whatever you want to make up your own compote, strawberries. So but what I think is lovely about using frozen fruit from the freezer is that it's a way of extending the season. And also, like in the supermarket now, we have strawberries coming in from Egypt, and I know, like, you know, so many of us do it and we don't like doing it. And even a couple of weeks ago I bought a bunch of strawberries myself, and I wasn't thinking, and I came home and I looked at it, and on it said from Egypt, and I was thinking, how ridiculous am I buying this punnet of strawberries, blue or whatever way it got here, the whole way from Egypt. It doesn't make sense, and it just doesn't sit, you know. But anyway, that's the way it is, and so that's why I like to try and use whatever we can as be as sustainable as possible. So I always say an 80-20 balance. So in here I have 200 grams of mixed fruit. Into that I'm going to add a little bit of orange zest. So we'll just get her a grater. Now you could use lemon, you could use lime, or you could use none at all. Just leave them all out and just lightly grate it then along. And I'm going to sweeten this with some of Fiona and Pat McCormick's beautiful honey. They have about 23 or 25 beehives, and they just are a mile down the road from us, and they have the beautiful native Irish bee. I just say Fiona and Pat are absolutely mad about bees, and I love the fact that, you know, we can use this honey. It's so local, and they're protecting the native Irish bee, which is so important. So we pop that in there along with some of this beautiful honey, and this is summer honey now, but they also have heather honey and ivy honey, and they have in the now just about that much in there, Michael. So we've got 3 or 4 teaspoons or tablespoons of honey gone in there. Absolutely gorgeous. Yum yum. So that goes in now onto a little, actually I'm going to put that on a low heat, so I just leave it here behind, just like that. So there's no need to add any liquid and any orange juice or anything like that, because I find when the fruit defrosts and settles, there'll be quite enough juice out, so you don't want too much juice either, and that will be running off the plate. So even if you didn't want to put that in heat, that would sit quite happily there in a saucepan and it'll defrost itself. But I just find the heat gives a little kind of push on. So we just leave that there, and that'll do its thing. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how we're going to do our egg. So for our egg and custard base, we're going to crack in 4 eggs. 1. So we just lightly, before we add in our milk or any of our flavourings, we just lightly beat up them eggs, and it just leaves it easier then to mix, particularly when we're adding the honey in here as well. So I'm just going to stop now for a second, and I'm going to check our apples here. So we'll just turn them over and see how we're doing here. Yeah, you see that? Lovely caramelization on your apple. That's exactly what we're looking for, okay? So I'm going to flip all of these over now, and we'll come back to them when that's done. So the other way you can test your apples then is, now there's a nice little push. You have to kind of push to get it through, and that's exactly, we don't want them mushy at this stage. So they're caramelized lovely on both sides. What we're going to do now is turn up our heat, because the reason we're turning up our heat is because we're going to add in the cold apple juice, and I don't want the apple sitting too long in cold liquid. So we just turn it up nice and hot, and we add it in just around like that. Okay.
And what does the apple juice do, Fiona?
It sweetens it, and it adds to the flavour of the apples already there. Good question, Michael. And the other thing, again, more of our delicious honey, and again, this is the best of Irish produce, the best of Longford produce, the best of Abertruth. the lovely apples. The apples are not our own, I have to say, but at the same time they're Irish, and that's what it's all about, rather than these Egyptian strawberries landed in. So we're going to add in about 100 grams, or just about half a jar of honey in here. Lovely summer honey. And Christmas is a lovely time to give a little nod to our little friends out in the wild, and our animals. Absolutely gorgeous. It's delicious out in the wild, and our animals here on the farm and all that, because we are a team and humans can't run the world, and we do need to work in harmony. So sometimes humans think they can do it all, but nature always comes back to bite us on the tail. So anyway, what we're going to do is heat is up there. That's basically going to keep cooking there, kind of boiling, and it'll thicken up as it does so, and it'll cook out the rest of the apple. So we can come back to that. That's quite happy sitting there. We may need to turn it down. Now the other thing I forgot to mention was, in here, just for a little bit, I'm going to add in a star anise into our fruit compote, and I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Always when you're adding in cloves or star anise, always count them. So I'm just going to add in one, just like that. And I might just add in a little bit of cinnamon, a small little bit of cinnamon in there. No, actually I won't. I'll leave out the cinnamon. But what I am going to add into it is a little bit of nutmeg. Just a little bit of fresh nutmeg, and I'm going to grate it. Now, that's a nice little cinnamon, or a bit of nutmeg and a star anise. So again, that's what I forgot to add that in earlier on. That's grand. Our apples are caramelizing. Now, we're on a roll. In here, as I said, are 4 eggs. And I'm going to add a little bit of cinnamon in here. I was going to put the cinnamon in the compote, and then I decided no, because I'm going to put it in here in the egg. So just a little bit of cinnamon. Again, you kind of leave it up to yourself. Some again of our beautiful honey. Now if you didn't want to use the honey, of course you could use maple syrup, you could use golden syrup, you could just use regular sugar, brown sugar, whatever you prefer. So just again, and enough to basically sweeten. Now at this stage, if you wanted savoury French toast, just leave out the honey or the sweetener. And also the other thing about savoury French toast, you could leave out the cinnamon and add in some chilli. It'd be absolutely gorgeous. And some cumin. You know, that's the lovely thing about spices, and that's the lovely thing about French toast. It's a bit like a stew. You can add in or leave out whatever you want. So just give that a nice little mix there. So now I've just added in the milk as well in there, along with our egg, our honey and our spices. And your board. And this is just some sourdough bread, but you can use just regulars. Get good quality bread, but good quality if you're using sliced pan. Batch bread is absolutely gorgeous too. So just dip it in. Now I don't like to leave it sitting in the liquid for too long, because I just think it makes the bread soggy. So I like to keep it nice and crisp on the edge. So we just move that over here. So I'm going to heat up our pan for our French toast. A little bit of butter in there. Swirl it around, turn off the heat. And I'm going to add in our bread. Just give it a little minute there. Beautiful apples. Absolutely gorgeous. So if you wanted to pop them into your fridge now, into a little container, if you didn't want to have them, or if you had some left over, pop them in. But remember, if you just pop them onto a little bit of heat again, that toffee will soften up again very easily for you. So that's no problem. Excess egg or custard, pop it in. And same with this bit. In she goes. And just a couple of minutes then on either side. And when it's nice and golden on the bottom, we'll flip it over. Oh, lovely colour on the other side. And the same here. And we just give them another 2 minutes. And our toast is ready. So just bring it over, and you want to serve this immediately. So some of our A little bit of apple. And I'm just going to plate and just spoon on some of our lovely apples onto it here. And that lovely toffee. Absolutely gorgeous. Yum yum. Really is so delicious. And even with some homemade granola, absolutely gorgeous too. And just a little bit drizzled on top. And a little bit of fruit compote on this one. So just remember, that's what I was saying to you earlier on there about don't be adding any liquid in, because the fruit itself will release lots of juice. So just so that on top. A little bit, just like that. Okay. And I actually have here some apple mint. I got it during the summer. There's about 50 different varieties of mint, believe it or not. Spearmint is the most popular, and it's not the one I have preference to, because I sometimes think spearmint is a very minty, really strong. I remember when you were young and spearmint chewing gum was really popular, and if you stand beside somebody, you could get the smell of spearmint coming across. And sometimes I think spearmint mint is too strong. So I love that apple mint. And there's another lovely one I remember one time smelling, and it was ginger mint. It was absolutely gorgeous, and I'm on the lookout ever since for some ginger mint. So just a little bit of mint. I go kind of rooting in at the back of the herb plot, in at the bottom, and you might get a little few leaves. I have a little bit of lemon balm here as well, and so we can pop that on top of our apple. And we're just going to put on top of our apple a little dusting of ice and sugar, just along like that, just before you serve it. And then for our smoked salmon, remember you just omit the sweet, whatever you are sweetening it with, if it's honey or if it's golden syrup or sugar, just omit and add in, as I said, chili, ginger, cumin, just a few little bits along like that. I'm putting it to there now, and garnish with a few little bits of chives on top. That's a lovely breakfast for Christmas morning, and a little bit of natural yogurt or the Greek yogurt on the side there for your savoury pancake. And that's a lovely one for Christmas morning, savoury. And there's two options for sweets. And as I said, they're suitable for breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, whatever. The tick-all boxes. We really focus in our own eggs here from Clown Farm, whole foods, same with our honey, and extending the seasonality either by pitting our apples or through the freezer, but just trying to eat as much from our own country or as locally as possible. So I hope that gives you a few little simple ideas for Christmas. Thank you, and stay safe, everybody.